Alrighty, welcome back everyone, I am Blaze here. This is the video for the top 3 caster DPS classes, or magic-based DPS classes. This list is a little more flexible in that depending on what expansion, there's a lot of variability on who is the top on the parse. But let's get into it. In general, the top DPS of the casters is Wizard, hands down. The Wizard class has the hardest single target nukes. They have the hardest AoE nukes. There's really no one that compares to them in terms of that. And they have very nice utility on raids in terms of the planes ports in classics such as Plane of Hate or Plane of Sky, which they're the only ones that can do that if you don't plan on doing a instance, or if you can't, like on Project 1999. They can really spit out some heat, and I think they get some clickies that allow them to sustain DPS when they run out of mana. But that's really their main shortcoming, in that once they're out of mana, they are out. And they also generate a load of aggro. It's very easy for them to out aggro a warrior on a raid, out aggro the main tank on a raid, and get smoked very quick and lose out on the parse. It's very easy for them to do that. Number 2 on the top DPS list, I would place Necromancer. And this is variable. So Necromancers are hands down the most efficient and hardest hitting dot dealers. They are the hardest hitting damage over time class. They can do large amounts of damage very efficiently per their mana cost. And on long-term fights where a wizard is outpaced, where they run out of mana quick, Necromancers hands down definitely beat them on those fights, but they have to be very long-term fights. And also against undead, they have a strong advantage against undead, especially too if they can even charm. If they can charm, boy does that have a lot of extra DPS. Such as in Plane of Hate, they can definitely charm some of those undead mobs. And Necromancers also have some further advantages, being that they have arguably the best mana regeneration in the game with their Lich line. They have some incredible clickies, being the Morturnum cap, basically life tap dot, being their epic with the snare, being these clicky splurge holders they get in Vexthal and Shadows of Luklin, and a couple other dots that are available to them. And they're also very indispensable in some raids when you're talking about using Call the Hero, in that they have 2 invulnerability spells on top of their Feign Death, and their 93% res with Essence Emeralds that lets them take a Magician Corpse far past a bunch of trash mobs, res that Magician themselves, and give them mana with their Twitch line of spells, and get that Magician up and running and ready to cough the majority of the raid past maybe 30 minutes, if not an hour, of clearing through many raid targets. They're very helpful in that regard. Now, number 3 on the list, in general, I would place Magician. Magicians have the best pets in the game, and they have some strong single target nukes. They don't necessarily have very good AoEs. I think really it's only wizards that have a strong multitude of AoE nukes, but Magicians have pets that are very great for initially throwing out to get aggro on a raid target so people can get into position without being hit. They have very good pets in terms of holding aggro, just in general, even in groups. And Magicians also have their very strong utilities in terms of their summonables, such as Modulation Rods, which lets you get mana in exchange for hit points. One of the only ways a bard can instantly get mana back. They're very useful for bard AoE, crazily enough. They have summonable focus effects for equipment, summonable pet items that make them have haste and better attack damage delays. Not to forget to mention Call the Hero, being an incredibly useful time-saving feature and absolutely necessary on many raids, of where you just don't have time to clear through an entire dungeon. So you can just have a magician in the correct spot, call everybody in the raid to them, and go from that point on without having to spend hours of clearing through needless trash that drops nothing, honestly. Just makes raids much longer than they need to be. And now for honorable mentions, this is how the top caster DPS classes are really variable. I would actually say magicians go up higher in previous expansions because pets are very powerful come Classic and Kunark. But I'd actually say that enchanters are top 1, are top DPS in Classic, and very near top 1 in Kunark. And the reason being that charm is insanely powerful in those expansions. Those pets, those charm mobs are very beefy and they hit hard relative to most casters and most melee DPS classes in that era. Charm pets are insane. Just as proof of that, I have an anecdote of a fight back in Classic era where we're going against Nagafin, the red dragon, and an enchanter who had a charmed spider in Nagafin's lair died, and I picked up the spider as a bard. I kept that spider the whole entire fight on Nagafin, and I ended up number 2 on the parse, tied with an enchanter from that pet's DPS. There's no way a bard would ever make it on the parse realistically if it was not for charm. And enchanter can do that like it's their bread and butter, unlike a bard. I mean, a bard's limited by having to refresh it every single minute. An enchanter has a much longer lasting one. So it was insane to see how effective they were on raids. They were honestly the best DPS classes and the most consistent DPS class in that early era, and they were really needed for playing a Sky to clear quick because of the level cap at that time being 50, where most wizard and necromancer dots or nukes wouldn't land on redcon mobs. So it was really melee DPS and enchanter charm pets putting in the work. And lastly, we can talk about, say, shamans. They have some pretty strong dots, but they're much more in a general utility class. So really in the top 4, it's wizards, necros, magicians, and enchanters, and it's variable on expansion on where they place. Charming does definitely become a lot less effective come later expansions. Now, in terms of overall how they compare to melee DPS classes, honestly, wizards are almost always number 1, and then I would say monks or rangers in Shadows of Luklin. 3, depending on the longevity of the fight, necromancers can get up there on number 3, or even number 2. And then that's where you get about the mid-tier DPS, such as the rogues and magicians. And enchanters, if they nuke, they can show up on the parse, but that about rounds it out. And again, prior to Velius, around middle tier of Kunark, enchanters are number 1. Charmed DPS is just insane. Enchanters, anybody for that matter, who can charm. If there's a undead zone where a necromancer could charm, or a bard, even a bard, their only issue is their mana limitations. They can definitely make it up top tier on the parse. So thank you all for watching. See you in the next one.